Hello, and welcome to another fully live Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and unfortunately today, for everyone who came with cryptozoology questions, we do not have Michael today. Instead, we have my sometimes co-host Alex Lin, who is also the co-host of the Hack5 channel. Alex, thank you for joining us today.
Of course.
So he's going to be here to offer some more hacker advice and feedback rather than cryptozoology, because we just found that there weren't a lot of cryptozoology questions. Of course, today's the day it seems like everyone came armed with cryptozoology questions, so if you want to ask them, feel free. But otherwise, we're going to be answering your hacker questions and answering any comments that we've got on our videos this week. So if you want to make sure that your question gets included, then make sure to either leave it in the chat, or you can also make sure to drop it on the YouTube channel on SecurityFWD, and we will include your question in the roundup every week. Also, hello to everyone who is live in the chat. It's great to see Zam and everyone else out there like Victor. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Our first question today, I think we'll just take straight from the chat. And that would just be how to get started with hacking, which is a question we get a lot, but I like that we have Alex here today because he got started with hacking a lot earlier than I did. So I believe his story would start out something like, I got suspended several times for hacking related things. But yes. Alex, maybe you could explain what it was like to get into hacking, or where you got started with hacking.
I personally got started hacking sometime around 8th grade. So we had like these TI-84 graphing calculators, and my friend really wanted to learn like how to load programs on it or games and stuff like that. So we started out of like a place of necessity where we had something that we wanted to hack and modify. So we basically just like looked on forums online and stuff like that to see how other people have learned to exploit these sort of things.
So basically getting involved in projects with friends and then kind of like looking online to fill in what you didn't know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think practical projects are how a lot of people get started. Like if it's tangible, if it's something that you can like do in a couple days or actually learn to do on your own, it's a really good gateway into some of these more like abstract or like technical things. So a one-off project or something that focuses on a specific outcome often is the best way to get a little bit of a reward at the end of like taking the first steps of doing cybersecurity or hacking or really whatever. So, you know, if you're interested, maybe just break off a project, a specific project you know you can do in a couple of days, just so you can get the hang of it and get some practice in completing a technical hacking project, even if it is just like reverse engineering something or figuring out the way that something works. So one question, how tall is Alex? Alex is 7'1", if you can believe it. It's difficult to fit him in this room. He's very folded up in this chair.
7'2"?
I'm so sorry, 7'2". He's still growing, which is crazy. So we have to have a special vehicle that like is towed behind our vehicle to actually bring him around with us while he's here.
I didn't see that question.
Yeah, very, very tall to answer your question. Also, somebody says nobody believes Bigfoot is actually real. Michael would be so hurt to hear you say that. I'm not going to tell him you said that, but Michael would not be happy about that. Let's see. Are you going to do an episode on the Flipper tool? Do you know what the Flipper tool is?
Yeah. It's like that multi-protocol, like Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi. It's just like a signals pen testing platform.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
Really cool.
It's kind of hard to describe. Like I struggle to explain it any better than Alex. It's like a Swiss Army knife kind of thing for signals, but not just Wi-Fi signals. It also does NFC. It just does, or like RFID. It does so much stuff. It's kind of confusing because you know it's really cool that it comes packed with so many things. But at the same time, for one, it looks like just a crazy amount of features that it has. Just like it's able to do absolutely everything. It's super integrated. It's super small. I'm really interested in it. But I'm also curious to see like when it's going to come out, because I immediately like contacted the developer and I was like, hi, I would love to cover this on Hack5 once it comes out. Like, just let me know. So, but I haven't really heard anything back. And in keeping an eye on the Kickstarter campaign and then the associated website, there's some like just my opinion here, but there's some like serious money behind this project. The website is crazy. It's crazy looking. It's like really, really, really good. So it's an extremely professionally looking project. I don't know. It just kind of seems like it might take a little bit longer than everyone is expecting to actually roll out because of the sheer scale of features that they're trying to integrate into it. So when Flipper, I think it's Flipper Zero is what it's technically called. When that comes out, I will absolutely be covering it as soon as I can get one. But I just I have this weird feeling based on like how fancy the website is and some other stuff that it might take a little bit longer to produce these things than people are expecting, just because it's like, I don't know of any other tools that do as much as this tool is claiming to want to do. So if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Actually, I might even pull it up and see if I can find it. Just provide a little visual aid. Let me see. Yeah, okay, cool. So I found it. So if we switch over to my screen, we can see it's the Flipper Zero. It's a multi-tool device for geeks. Not for hackers, just geeks. And it's got like this like robot dolphin, like cyborg dolphin that encourages you to do bad things. That's great. And then, you know, you've got this button setup, which I think is actually kind of cool and innovative. Alex and I are working on some like prototypes for basically like hacking games and stuff like that that utilize buttons in kind of a similar configuration. So it's nice to see other people kind of going along the same route. GPIO pins, you can add all sorts of other stuff. So we've got micro SD card integration, USB Type-C, a transceiver here for the sub-gigahertz range, radio, customizable radio platform, signal analyzer, 125 kilohertz RFID for prox cards, NFC, just like Bluetooth. Like you guys see, like this is a monumental project. There's like so much stuff going on here. We've got a friggin' infrared transceiver. Like this thing won't stop. Oh my god, it's not even. We're still going.
It just keeps coming.
Yeah. So bad USB mode. It can act like a keyboard. Like come on, you guys. Like this is basically taken like 6 successful products that already exist and integrated them into one like super tiny thing. Again, if it works. I've never received one, and like frankly, like I get some just weird vibes off the website, just be like because the website is like extremely professional looking. Like these like breakdowns are like really nice, and like I don't know, like I just get I feel like this is gonna take longer to come out than initially expected, but we will see. This list is just too damn big, you know, for it to come out easily without some sort of problem. So we'll see. I'm very interested in this project though, so thank you to whoever brought this up because I'm definitely keeping my eye on it, and I will be covering it if and when I am able to get one. All right, I guess we should do a question from the YouTube channel. How do we do that now?
I see it says Alex needs more stickers, and I wholeheartedly agree. I just got this laptop like about a week ago, and Cody has been loaning me his sticker collection to slowly patch it up. I just have to figure out what I want aesthetically here at the moment.
Yeah, we also have not gone to a conference for like almost 2 years now-ish, like a year and a half or so. So our sticker collection has gotten woefully like under. It's just not. It doesn't have the oomph it used to have. Like there were some really good stickers that you couldn't find anywhere else that have since been taken or given out or whatever. So like, you know, we've just kind of got some middle of the road stickers, but we will get him hooked up the second we get to an actual hacker conference. We were actually planning on going to DEF CON, which would have substantially increased the number of stickers on everything, but unfortunately, we decided not to go. Which kind of, it seems like some people got stranded there. It seemed like, you know, maybe not the best place for us. So, oh well. But yeah, don't worry. We'll get him up to snuff when it comes to the stickers. This is a new laptop, even though it has been like a day, so it should be fully covered by stickers by now. So let's see. Would you cover the news on the current Cordy ransomware leak? So we're going to cover news on Friday, and yes, absolutely. There's lots of stuff that has happened. Of course, like the Apple thing is probably the biggest thing we're going to be talking about, like the content like filter or not content like sifting through, I guess, and hashing that they're planning on doing to look for specific imagery on basically all Apple devices. That is a big part of the news, and we'll be talking about that. But yeah, we'll talk about ransomware and some other stuff that's happened over the week as well.
I need one of my stickers blurred out.
Probably.
Yeah.
Flipper, a gamified wireless pen testing tool. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool though. What are 3 tools in Kali that you suggest somebody learn?
Shoot, depends like what area of hacking you want to get into, but I'd say like Wireshark is probably one of my most used tools, just to like help visualize like packets and Wi-Fi data and stuff like that. Kismet's pretty cool. I like it because it's a really easy to learn war driving platform, and with their new web interface, it's just like really easy and smooth to use. And probably, I don't know. What do you think, Cody?
Well, for me, I would say definitely Wireshark. Getting familiar with Wireshark is super important and lets you know what's going on if you're going to be doing Wi-Fi hacking stuff. I would also, if you're doing Wi-Fi hacking stuff, I encourage people to learn BetterCap as well. It does a lot of really cool and sneaky things, both inside and outside of the network, and I use it a lot for demonstrations. And then, I would probably do Nmap. Nmap has lots of scripts that are like unexpectedly useful, and it's interesting to me that like with the right script, Nmap like kind of replaces or supplements like maybe 5 other tools that are for like brute forcing or locating something or doing something. There's just already scripts for Nmap that allow it to do that too. So I think it's really cool that Nmap is so expandable, and if you start learning how to not just do an Nmap scan to find something, but then run an Nmap script to like brute force something or exploit something, I think that that's a really cool way that you can take a program that's not that complicated that you can figure out fairly easily, and then learn the most advanced uses of it and really be able to do some cool stuff.
I think that paired with like Netcat too would also be useful.
Oh yeah. So can you explain Netcat?
It's basically just like a command line utility port scanning tool. Sort of, if that encapsulates it.
Well, that's not what I use Netcat for.
Oh shit! Wait, that's Nmap.
Yeah. So Netcat is a tool you can use to create like a backdoor connection. So I've used Netcat a couple times to just like create a connection on a computer and then like pipe data into it from a second computer, or like exchange information between 2 computers. It's just like a method you can use either to create a backdoor or make some other connection to a computer you want to access remotely, which is very handy. And I also like the name. And if you learn how to use Netcat, it can become very, very, very useful. All right, so we have one question. What's the best way to understand scanning and enumeration? So how would you describe scanning and enumeration in like an attack chain kind of process?
I think that's like one of the first, if I'm gauging this question correctly, that would be like one of the first things I would do if I'm looking to gather reconnaissance on something, just like start scanning and see what's open. Mm-hmm. Using a tool like, for example, Nmap to scan like what ports are open on like a network you're attacking, to see if like they have something open like SSH or like FTP or Telnet or something.
Yeah, exactly. So in the attacker's kill chain, or like whatever they call it, there's basically a series of actions that take you from the outside of the network with no privileges to the inside of the network with like, permissions and persistence and all the stuff that you would want to have when you are inside a network. So it's both like the first and like third steps is like, first you take a look at the outside perimeter, you identify the lowest hanging fruit or like the easiest target to attack. And then once you have a foothold on the network, you do enumeration, where you start looking around and saying, okay, what do I have access to now? What can I access on the network? What assets are here? And how can I use this access I have to increase the value of my little foothold here? So I would say, for me, I mostly do Wi-Fi stuff. So I'm going to be using something like Kismet or even Wireshark to take a look at the outside perimeter of the network and start looking entirely passively at what is going on. Now, there's 2 types of scanning and enumeration. There's passive and then there's active. So if you are doing something where you don't really care about being caught or you don't think you're going to be caught, then active scanning is obviously the easiest. You can start manipulating traffic to get more information more quickly, and that leads to tools like AirCrackNG and some, I'm going to say like B-Side NG, which just automatically attacks networks and stuff in order to try to get the Wi-Fi handshake, which would get you inside. The opposite of that would be just chilling there and listening with AirMonNG or Wireshark until a device connects to the network, and then you can take that handshake, use the information to get inside, and then enumerate as the device you just got the handshake from. So there's different ways of doing this. One of them is very subtle, and it's designed to be super stealthy, low and slow, try to use passive techniques as much as possible. And the other school of thought is like, how can we get there as quickly as possible? So that would be something like, as soon as you get on the network, blasting it with an ARP scan, an address resolution protocol scan, which would basically tell you every device that's on the network, and then following up with an Nmap port scan to tell you which ports are open and what operating system is running on on every one of those devices that you detected in the first scan. So, these sorts of things are just steps you take once you access the network or gain access to a new network, and you want to look around and see what's out there. But again, it all depends on how noisy you're willing to be on the network. You can do this in a very stealthy, passive way where you just kind of chill on the network and like only listen to requests and maybe inject a couple of packets to like increase the flow or something, but not really otherwise interact with the network in an unusual way, versus full on attacking the network as quickly as possible and not worrying about doing stuff that's a little suspicious, like blasting ARP scans and Nmap scans and whatever else that might be detected by an actually defended network. So scanning and enumeration are super, super easy for people to get started with. You can learn to do a scan on your router, like identify any ports that are open, start to see the operating system names, start to see like the best guess for the version that's running. All this stuff is critical for hackers who are looking to identify what's on a network and then find a way to break in, either from a vulnerability in the operating system or software that's running on it, or by brute forcing a password or something in a more active kind of way. Although that's not really enumeration unless you're enumerating the password. But yeah, there's lots of different ways to go about this. It really depends on who you are and what you want to do. But the core thing is discovering as much as you can about targets before attacking them. And just a practical example might be, there could be a vulnerable version of SSH running on a device. And if you first discover that it's there on the network and then hit it with a scan that tells you the version of SSH that's running on it, that might be all the information you need to successfully exploit that with the right piece of malware or exploit. So it's a critical phase for anybody to go through as you're doing any sort of attack when it comes to hacking or cybersecurity. But specifically in my experience when it comes to Wi-Fi hacking, it's like a very important phase to know what your targets are and what is running on them and what might be vulnerable. Why can't I open the Nullbyte website?
The server monkeys aren't doing their job today.
This is true. Also, I believe that the Nullbyte website was sold, and whoever bought it may not want it. I was not the owner, and I never was the owner of Nullbyte, so we just produced content for them. So I believe that the website has been sold, and no, Alex can see it. Yeah, so it seems like it's still up for some people. But yeah, so I have no idea what's going to happen with Nullbyte. We haven't been involved with them in at least a year or so. But if you can't access the website, we can at least see it, and we can see articles. So yeah, it doesn't look as though it's actually been taken down. But I would be very sad if it was, because there's lots of great content there.
Yeah.
What's something you look for in an Nmap scan results that says, aha, I can get in? Well, that example I gave of like an old piece of software running is probably the best one that I could do. Let's say that you're on a coffee shop network. No, okay, let's make this legal. Let's say that the coffee shop asks you to conduct a pen test and gives you written permission. Mm-hmm. So you join the network and you do a scan and you notice that there's SSH or FTP or some service running on something important. Maybe it's a file share. And then, after scanning it a little bit further, you determine that it's running an old version of that service that maybe hasn't been updated in like 5 years. Well, if there's already a tool, like if there's a module in Metasploit or something that has the ability to exploit that and, launch a interpreter session and get a foothold on that device, then that's really all you need in order to get into the network. First, find something that's flawed, old, hasn't been updated, and next, see if there's a module or an exploit for that specific CVE. So that's really generally it. You look around for problems, and when you find the problem, you start knocking on it. There's lots of tools out there to address these sorts of problems because researchers usually develop proof of concepts to show off like how these flaws work. So that would be my aha moment, is finding like an old service or operating system running that I know I have an exploit for, because it means like for sure you're going to be able to get in, unless there's a misleading reading or it's a honeypot. I think Alex's hoodie is navy.
Yes, you're correct.
Oh, yeah.
Gives me added stealth.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. All right, not really a question, but a good and accurate statement.
I also saw someone mentioned NetDiscover, so that's actually a very noisy and bad tool, I guess. Not really bad, but it's just kind of noisy. I personally use it if I'm just like on my home network and I want to find like a Raspberry Pi or ESP8266 I connected, and I just need to like quickly find its IP address without running an Nmap scan.
What are your thoughts about Apple sending false positive PSI results to obfuscate CSAM accounts on users' accounts? Oh man. Okay, that's such. I think we should probably touch that one on Friday because I have so much to say about it. Like, so in very, very brief, if you haven't seen the news, Apple's proposing to have a scanning program on all of its devices that allow it to look for hashes for specific imagery that some third party has determined are bad images and should not be on your device and are illegal. That is not necessarily the problem for most people. It's that the scanning program could easily be abused. There could be false positives depending on the way that they're rolling out the cryptography. And also, it would be relatively easy for somebody to force Apple to add other hashes to this in order to identify different types of people, potentially for other governments that are maybe not so concerned about human rights. So this has really big implications for people who want their phone to be their own phone and not have some built-in program constantly like rummaging around through it and possibly accidentally reporting them to some center for something that they don't actually have on their phones. There was some threads on also the number of false positives that would be expected with the numbers Apple were throwing out for like false detections, and they were pretty high. Like they were like high enough that you're going to have like a pretty well staffed organization like going through all these false positives and trying to determine which are real and which are not. The whole thing honestly seems like a mess and a really bad idea. So there's lots of technical elements of this that are coming to light that we can discuss probably more on Friday. But it's an interesting case, and if you haven't read up on it, it's definitely worth taking a look at the technology that's involved. It's using something that's called a perceptual hash, which leads it to be able to work. So we talked about how hashes work and how if you change a single bit, then the hash is no longer the same value. Well, perceptual hashes work a bit differently. They're able to hash images that are really similar or somewhat similar and end up with the same hash, which increases the likelihood that there would be false positive. In fact, there were some researchers who were able to generate collisions with images using this perceptual hash. So like there's lots and lots of different things that could happen with this plan that are unintended consequences. A lot of people really don't like it, and we will be talking about it more as the week goes on. Let's see. So one question was, what can I do outside of like Hack the Box to gain experience to get a job in the field? My question would be, what kind of job do you want? Do you want to be an analyst? Do you want to be a pen tester? Do you want to work in sales? Do you want to work in education? Like there's lots of different jobs you can get in cybersecurity depending on what your other skills are. So my biggest recommendation would be lean into your other skills. If you are a good people person, that is really rare in technical fields. So leaning into those traits can often get you a better paying job or one that suits your skills a little bit better than pushing towards something that maybe you're not as good at. If you have a previous career, tying the skills that you learned in that career back into what you're learning is also something that will give you an advantage over your peers. If you've learned a lot in another industry, or if you've just changed over in school from one to another, you might find that some of these previous skills actually do give you advantage in cybersecurity and make it easier for you to get certain jobs there. So I would say first, understand what kind of jobs you want to do. Cybersecurity has tons of jobs. They're not all pen testing. And if you start looking at other people who do this kind of work, you might find a job that you didn't know existed that is a really great fit for your skills that you can kind of start pushing yourself towards, and also kind of again recycle those skills to be able to learn those roles faster if they have skills that are in common with something you've already done. So that would be my advice. If you can lean into skills you already have or experience you already have, that can often give you an advantage in cybersecurity, get you hired faster, get you paid more. But aside from that, Alex, what would you recommend for people that want to buff their technical skills?
First off, I would agree with that. Like, finding ways to sort of mesh all your hobbies and skill sets together where you can just, like, practice exploiting in, like, different realms of technology, like learning to program, learning to work with hardware, stuff like that. Basically, as much as you can just diversify your skill set, I think that's really important. Especially taking on side projects that you enjoy that will, like, give you the opportunity to learn tools and basically other things you would use practically, like, in a cybersecurity job.
So one question is, how can I start if I want to become a cybersecurity expert, and what would be the roadmap? Well, let's say a cybersecurity expert in this case is like a consultant or somebody who, like a pen tester. I would say starting with networking is a really solid idea. Like understanding networking, I think, is even more fundamental than understanding computer science to being able to like work in a pen testing environment. Secondarily, learning a little bit of programming or computer science definitely can't hurt, but it's often not necessary. I would just say if you're going to, then learning C++ and Python are probably some of the most applicable languages to be able to modify anything from somebody else's like API calls to be able to work with your own use case, or just like modifying a proof of concept tool that's already out there that you want to adapt for a different purpose. That can save you a lot of time and a lot of money if you can just modify something a little bit that already exists. So I would say, while I don't emphasize computer science skills as critical for pen testing, I will say that they make it a lot easier to change, adapt, and make new tools if you ever need to. And that makes you a much more flexible employee. Aside from that, once you have some networking under your belt, I think it's really critical to be around other security people so you can kind of absorb some of the culture and understand what things they value in like learning and experience. Going to conferences, participating at hacker spaces, and otherwise being active in the community is something I think really, really helps people understand what it's going to be like in the field. And yeah, I think that being around other people that are on the same path is extremely helpful and motivating for you, especially if you're not sure what you want to do once you're fully trained yet, because some other people might be completely sure what they want to do and be able to give you some pointers on what might or might not be a good role for you. Again, there's lots of jobs in cybersecurity. So a cybersecurity expert could be, an expert on what? Integration? You could be an expert on integrating like really technical products that keep companies safe and make tons of money just doing that one thing. You could be an incident responder where like you only get called if something terrible has happened and you have to help figure out what has happened and mitigate the consequences. You could be a pen tester where you're going in and finding the problems. You could be on a blue team where on a daily basis you're hunting down people attacking the network and trying to figure out what's going on. Like there's so many different roles here, and like I do education and marketing. So I'm actually creating presentations and doing research to get people excited about cybersecurity and get them to want to work in this industry. So I'm not a pen tester. That's not my daily job. So there's so many different roles that you could have in cybersecurity, and it really again helps if you are around people who are also going into cybersecurity who might be really passionate about a job that you didn't know existed. So that would be my advice. It's just such a big field. Once you get the basic networking fundamentals down, it's good to have certifications if you have the time and money to do so. That will prove to people you can do certain things. But really, like participating in things like CTFs, understanding how the sort of thing works in a group setting, that will really make you stand out to employers. Because if you're somebody who has a solid networking background, a little bit of programming experience, but you've run CTFs in your local community, you've done games to help other people learn how to do this once you master it yourself. Like that kind of explains to people like, all right, I'm a self-starter, I like to create resources, and I'm able to utilize the things around me to get stuff done. And that's really what employers I think want to see. Whew, okay, that was a lot. Some ideas for projects. Do drone stuff, it sounds cool. I don't have the time to, so you should do it. And one of the people we replied to is an audio engineer looking to get into security analysis. Yeah, no, if you're looking to get into security analysis, my additional thing would be decide if you want to be an incident responder or like an analyst. Analysts will do things like reverse engineering. If you're going to do reverse engineering, then forget some of what I said. Computer science is important if you're doing reverse engineering, because you need to figure out what all these tricky people who have been like trying to make their code as sneaky and hidden as possible are actually up to. And that is a daunting task. So you will need computer science skills for that. But, if you're doing incident response, if you're like dealing with the aftermath of an attack, like that might not require as much computer science. It would be more networking and figuring out how to work with Linux systems. So it's kind of ironic to me that a lot of people that go into computer science learn very little about like Linux and the command line, Bash, like other things that people use all the time. But really having Linux skills will tremendously benefit you throughout your cybersecurity career. So that's another thing that people might not expect. Like rather than computer science, knowing your way around a terminal, knowing how to write Bash scripts, all of this stuff will really help you out as you need to automate things, scan things, and keep processes running that need to be running all the time. Any entry-level cybersecurity jobs to look for, ideas or recommendations? Well,
I guess like bug bounties would be one you could start doing from home. Basically just like
Please,
looking
yeah.
at ways to exploit certain like web apps or programs or things like that for companies that offer a bug bounty program. And if you're able to find like any bugs in their programs, they basically would just like pay you for having disclosed them to them. So I guess that's like an easy thing you could start doing at home. I don't know any other entry-level things. Do you have any suggestions?
I highly recommend bug bounties if you can do it. Like, I think it's something anybody can do. There's not that many steps in getting started, and you learn really valuable skills. So I would also echo, like, bug bounties are a great way to get started. It allows you to show some cred, like that you can do the work, and that, again, that you're a self-starter, and companies really like to see that. So if you can do that, participating in CTFs is also a good way to sharpen your skills and make sure that you're actually able to apply the things that you're learning. So I would say just don't shy away from real tests of your skill. Like, it's great to do things theoretically, but the more real world experience you can get, either in a CTF or, by just doing these things, like, will really, really help your chances. So yeah. All right, we have a technical question. Let's say the hypothetical coffee shop owner has a server room in the back that's the target, and the guest Wi-Fi for the coffee shop up front. Could you use ettercap to grab the handshake and escalate to a hop, and then escalate to a hop? So the question is, like, could you attack like the server room in the back through the guest Wi-Fi? The answer is absolutely yes. I wouldn't use ettercap though. Ettercap's really old, and I have not found it to work super stably. I would use bsite-ng. I would use bettercap. Or a number of other tools, even just Wireshark, just waiting for somebody to connect to the network to grab the handshake. Now, another thing that's interesting is nobody needs to be connected to this network in order to get a handshake. You can actually just extract it via a PMKID attack, which is able to extract a hash from the network when it's just there sitting by itself. So if the Wi-Fi network password is bad, or if it has a feature like WPS setup enabled, then I can break into the guest Wi-Fi, scan around, find the server, and then if it has any vulnerabilities, like if it hasn't been updated in a while, or if there's another vulnerable device on the network, I can pivot, break into that third device, and use that as kind of my base of operations on the network to start scanning around, attacking, and otherwise establishing persistence. So you could absolutely attack like a server from the guest network. In fact, I have had to tell my dentist to not have their server on the guest Wi-Fi, because that is exactly the kind of possibility that could happen. Who knows what kind of files are there, but if you have it accessible through the guest network, it's a pretty good chance that somebody could pivot in one of two ways, either through using the guest network to break into either the router or another device on the network, or, well, actually, no, I would just do that. That's probably what I would do. That's the easiest way. I'm not going to get too fancy on this one. So yeah, there's lots of different instances where even denial of service can be really bad. So let's say that server processes payments. And in order for this business to be open, they need this to be running all the time. Well, via the guest network, I don't need to break into the server. I can just disable it. I can just use traffic shaping to just drop packets that are supposed to be going to the router and make it so that they can't actually process any payments at all, or they're basically kicked offline because I'm poisoning the network. So there's lots of different ways to attack devices besides just breaking into them. Sometimes just disabling them is devastating enough that for a business that needs to process transactions or something, taking this offline would be bad to the point that it doesn't matter that I haven't broken in. It's still going to ruin their business. I tried following Spacesoon's guide on de-authing 5 GHz Wi-Fi with a PAU09 adapter, but it ultimately failed. Any suggestions? So de-authenticating... All right, so let's back up. For people who don't know what this is, it's very, very easy to send packets that will kick somebody off of a Wi-Fi network or kick somebody's device off of a Wi-Fi network. And this is useful either for continually sending this and preventing them from connecting to the network at all, or just kicking them off for a moment in order to grab a Wi-Fi handshake. Now, as I said, this isn't quite as critical because most networks you can extract the pass, or you can extract the same hash with the PMKID attack. So you actually don't need to kick anybody off the network if you don't really want to. But for the sake of argument, if you did want to jam a device off the network, maybe a 5 GHz security camera, I guess, that's over Wi-Fi for some stupid reason, then you could do the exact same process. You would just need a wireless network adapter that is capable of supporting 5 gigahertz. So Wi-Fi comes in two flavors, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. 2.4 is more common, and you'll see most IoT devices use this, but nowadays most devices that are higher end will support dual band, so 5 gigahertz will be an option. So if you were to kick a device off of a 2.4 gigahertz network, it would just mosey on over to the 5 gigahertz network that's usually broadcast by the same router, and then it would be outside of your range to attack unless you had a wireless network adapter that supports 5 gigahertz. So that's what this question is about. How do I go after a device that's on a 5 gigahertz network? And the truth is, like, it's not that difficult. I've watched this guide. It's pretty good. But there's several alpha wireless networks, network adapters that I prefer when doing 5 gigahertz attacks. So maybe I could cover like 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi on a separate episode. In fact, that's a great idea. Do you guys want to see that? If you want to see us cover, I think we might have even done it before. I know we did it on Nullbyte a long time ago. I'm not sure if we've done it on SecurityFWD, but if you guys would like to see us do an episode on 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, we can absolutely do that, and maybe recommend some additional wireless network adapters, because the PAU09, if I remember correctly, is the one that has like horns. So it has like two like big, it's like definitely going to get you weird looks in a coffee shop for sure. But there are some alpha wireless ones that also support 5 gigahertz that are pretty small and pretty concealable. So we could do an episode on that if you guys would like to see it. But in general, like if you have a supported wireless network adapter, the only problem might be in the driver, like making sure that the proper driver is downloaded to control it. I found that there are some network adapters that just don't play well with Kali Linux. I don't know why. But this should be relatively easy to do, provided you have a supported wireless network adapter. It works with Kali Linux. You can put it in monitor mode, and then you can run a program like
Aircrack?
No, not Aircrack, because that's for actually breaking the hash.
Which one are you thinking of?
Well, okay, so I usually use the different, I think you can use B-side NG in 5 gigahertz mode. In fact, I know you can. So if you wanted to attack like a specific network, I would personally use B-side NG. You can also use AirPlay NG to like send packets, but I don't actually use that. I use B-side NG because it has swears inside the code, and I think that's funny. Yeah, so I would use B-side NG. I would switch it to a 5 gigahertz network, and that would allow it to attack devices that are on 5 gigahertz networks. Now, I think Stefan used a different example, so maybe try B-side NG. Honestly, that could be another suggestion. I think he did this manually using like AirPlay NG or something else, or he might have used like MDK3 or something like that. So there's lots of different programs out there to send de-authentication packets, and really you just need to be listening in on that channel. You can do it with Wireshark, or as I said, you can just use B-side NG, which will both listen in and attack at the same time. So really interesting question. We get it a lot. And also, you know, it's a bummer that some of these really cheap microcontrollers do not support 5 gigahertz. So this is kind of a different process than the super easy process of de-authenticating on, you know, a 2.4 gigahertz network. So it is definitely something worth covering. And again, sound off in the comments if you want us to cover it, because it's definitely something we could do. I've covered it before, and it is very, very interesting to learn what the difference is between 5 gigahertz and 2.4.
Someone mentioned AirGetOn. That's probably one of my favorite Wi-Fi hacking scripts. It encapsulates like a whole variety of different tools in Wi-Fi attacks, and it's just really easy to use.
Yeah, I really like AirGetIn. AirGetIn also seems to have just duct taped like 10 different tools all together, if not more. So what I like about AirGetIn is it's a Wi-Fi like pen testing platform. It's not just an individual tool. It has lots of different things. Like I use it to audit Wi-Fi networks very quickly. So I'll do like the WPS setup attack, which will work in like 15 seconds if it's valid. It only works like 40% of the time, but I always try that first. And then I can try a Wi-Fi handshake attack. And if that doesn't work, I can try to do an evil twin attack and try to phish the password. All those are included in AirGetIn. So if you haven't checked it out, I actually haven't used it in a while. So hopefully it's still been updated, but it's like, it just has tons of stuff all kind of duct taped together in a way that actually does work. I like the interface. I think it's easy for beginners to learn. And yeah, it's really funny. Somebody's demanding we cover 6 gigahertz. All right, dang. So someone is also asking, doesn't protected frames protect against de-authentication attacks? Yes, but I've almost never seen it implemented. There is a standard for Wi-Fi that has been released like years ago that protects against this kind of attack, and nobody implements it. It is not turned on by default. You have to specifically go in and do it, and then devices that connect to you have to support it. It's just like, it was very poorly rolled out. So as a result, I almost never see Wi-Fi networks that are protected against this sort of attack, just because nobody seems to enable it. Now, if you wanted to enable on your network protected network frames, then absolutely go for it. That would reduce the attack surface. But like I said, I actually don't need to kick anybody off of your network in order to get the hash that I can use to break your Wi-Fi password. I can just do the PMKID attack and extract it from your router directly. So, I mean, you know, it's nice to prevent de-authentication attacks because it prevents somebody from persistently jamming your Wi-Fi network. That is a really good thing, especially if you have like a 5 gigahertz camera or a Wi-Fi camera or something that you want to make sure it doesn't get knocked offline. So, I mean, especially in these applications, if you can do WPA3 or if you can do protected management frames, then it's a much, much more likely deal that your camera will not be kicked offline by anybody who has like, you know, $1.80 microcontroller. So yeah, there are ways of protecting against this sort of attack, because the whole thing is like, these management frames are not authenticated, so anybody could be sending them. So if I want to just pretend to be the router and tell your device to disconnect over and over and over, there's no way in the Wi-Fi standard, unless protected management frames are enabled, to tell whether or not it's the router saying that or if it's just some random guy who just wants to, you know, kick your device off the network. So that's really the problem here that WPA3 and protected management frames solve. But there's a number of different ways to either downgrade the security or otherwise attack it. So nothing is exactly perfect. Let's see. Whew. We have lots of really good questions today, by the way. I really, really appreciate everybody who's participating. And I'm also so sorry for Firesnake. I know that you guys have tons of cryptozoology questions today. You guys came so prepared, and we are just lacking in Michael's today. So I will make sure that they get answered next time. But yes, please hold your cryptozoology questions for now. Let's see. Oh, cool. All right, yeah, so there's lots of people we like here. All right, so if you guys have any other questions, again, make sure to drop them in the chat. And
looks like we're pulling up some.
Oh yeah, all right. Questions. So we have a question from the actual channel, but I can't read it because it's too small.
What are your and Michael's favorite laptops for hacking? Just curious. I just bought the 11th gen MSI GS66. Their top model of it, but are having mixed feelings.
Okay, so that's a great question. Alex, you've mostly worked off of computers that were given to you or like you like salvaged. So like,
right.
Yeah, so Alex might not be the best person to talk about like high-end performance gaming computers. And again, I also have been given a number of computers that I'm like, all right, this is good enough, I'll just use it because it's free. So do I recommend macOS as a system for hacking? No, I do not. I do have a ThinkPad that I like a lot. It's a little bit older, but I use it for my Linux stuff, and I don't mind it.
ThinkPad.
Alex also has a ThinkPad. ThinkPads are really popular amongst like just the like ethical hacking community in general, I feel like. So I can't give you too much like of a in-depth breakdown on that one, unfortunately, because again, I think that we just mostly use computers that are given to us or like easily accessible. Yeah. But of those computers, I would say macOS is not a great choice, and like a Linux ThinkPad is actually probably a great choice. So
for a cheaper alternative, you could do like even I was gonna wait, no, that's kind of dumb. I was gonna say like a Raspberry Pi is like a disposable Linux thing that you could just like have tethered on you, and it works pretty well for like most applications, I would say. If you're not looking to have like a dedicated hacking computer. But like ThinkPads, they're pretty modular. You can find components for them pretty easily if it breaks or whatnot. So yeah.
If anybody from Lenovo is listening, send me a ThinkPad and I'll say such nice things about it, I promise. Okay, so we have a question about Maltego. So how would you describe Maltego?
I would say it's a very polished interface that lets you fingerprint and generate like a visual map of a target that you're looking to attack. So basically it's just like visualizing and organizing data that you collect on a certain target.
Yeah, that's right. So this is Maltego's called link analysis, and basically what it does is it graphs relationships between different types of data and allows you to pull in more data via APIs. So if we switch over to my screen, we have a sample investigation I've been working on using our good friend Darren Kitchen, the original creator of Hack5, and someone who's told me that I'm allowed to do this. So if I just start with the name from someone, what Maltego is designed to do is allow me to run these transforms to quickly find things like email addresses associated with that person. I can find breaches that those email addresses were involved in. In this case, I can see Darren's email address was breached multiple times on LinkedIn, Kickstarter, Patreon. It was included in this pastebin dump. And I can also, so I can see lots of interesting stuff. I can also see things like screen names, which allows me to take a screen name and pivot off of that. So all this information is really useful for somebody running an investigation because I'm slowly building up more and more clues. And as I go down further, I can see from this email address, I can see, that both of these, as well as dkitchen at hack5.org, have both been breached in Ticketfly. So I can also verify different email addresses I discover through finding them included in the same breaches, which is a pretty funny way of being able to go back and like kind of identify which email addresses someone's actually using by which services have been breached using it. So I have the ability to go and find any websites that include that email address. I can pull out certificates and find if any other websites are using the same SSL certificate. And then I can do a technical breakdown to take a look and see, who owns this domain, who is providing the hosting, and whether or not there's any other DNS servers that might be hosting additional pages. So this is how I can go through and start like breaking down all the different clues I find, just starting from an individual's name. Again, we literally just started from Darren Kitchen. We found 2 email addresses. We dropped it down to a bunch of services that had been breached on that email address, located which websites included the email addresses, and then we're able to find more information about that website as well. So this is just beginning to like footprint an individual or any organizations they might be involved in relatively quickly. Here I can also, if this view doesn't make sense to you, then you can also switch to a more organic view to be able to see clusters of relationships. And this is useful because you'll see anything that's all related to something will like orbit around it. And I can also add weights to this. So I can see by the size of the like ball that's representing a particular entity, how many different things are coming in and going out of it. So this makes relationships really obvious to spot. It's like, oh, there's a big cluster around this. It's like, all right, well, what's this thing that everything is related to? Oh, Hack5 Darren, this screen name. Okay, cool. So this allows me to very quickly pick out relationships in the data that would be like a little confusing at first. It's like, okay, what do all these things have in common? Well, they're all hosted at this IP address. All right, what do all these things have in common? Well, they're all related to this email address we found. So the original question was, which transforms are my favorite? I would say my favorite transforms are certificate transforms and tracking code transforms. So if we have an organization that has a bunch of different websites that's using like Google Analytics or some other tracking technology, then if they're lazy, they might go ahead and use the same tracking code for lots of different supposedly disconnected domains. So I use this to find, I can't name the organization on the string, but I use this to look up domains which are pretending to be unaffiliated, but are actually affiliated with this big creepy other entity. And the way I can do that is by using the to tracking code domain and then looking to see if any other websites are using that tracking code. Is it available here? I never can remember. Nah, so it's not here. But I can never remember if this operates on domains or URLs. I think it operates on URLs. So I would need to get a different entity to do this particular search. But there's a lot of really interesting things you can do to, like the SSL certificate transforms. I think I already did this. But what this will do is it will extract the certificate that's being used to secure this website. Oh, great. That's being used to secure this website. And then if there's any other websites that are sharing that certificate, it'll show me. So, if they're being lazy and just using the same infrastructure in multiple places, I can use Maltego to quickly identify that. So this has been a pretty fun investigation. Darren was visiting a couple weeks ago, and I was telling him I was frustrated that I didn't have anybody to investigate anymore that won't get mad now that John McAfee has passed away. And he was just like, oh, just use me. So that's what we're doing. But anyway, so that would be my answer. Maltego is really good for finding sneaky organizations that are lazy at the same time. So if you have something that you think might be linked to another organization, check the tracking codes and check the SSL certificate, because you might find that they're using the same SSL certificate or the same tracking code for multiple different domains, which can allow you to tie a bunch of different organizations together that are actually connected but are pretending to be independent. Use this many times. Oh yeah, and then some other people are talking about how macOS sucks for hacking. It does. I cannot even use a wireless network adapter via a virtual machine on this new macOS computer. So if you're looking to do Wi-Fi hacking stuff, I feel like you are going to be using your backup Linux computer a lot on macOS, because I cannot get this even capturing packets very well, let alone able to use some of the newest, like bleeding edge tools.
Yeah, I would recommend getting like a Raspberry Pi that you can just like tether over. I think the Raspberry Pi 4 supports USB-C or something. You could like tether it over serial to your computer as like a little portable box that you can use for Wi-Fi hacking or whatever, without worrying about like screwing up your main operating system.
Someone else. Oh, okay. So then there's a conversation about boot camp. I mean, if you dual boot a macOS system, then like it's a pain, but like that would actually make it better. All right, so let's see if we can grab another question from the show. Perhaps our disembodied voice of Michael could read this out to us.
Attach Raspberry Pi to drone. Run Kismet. Profit.
I don't see where the profit part comes in, but I agree.
Yeah, who are we selling that to? But sure, yeah. So a Raspberry Pi on a drone is something that's been done before to pretty good effect with the Skyjack, I believe it was called, attack. Or it might have been Skyhook, something like that. But it was by Sammy Kamkar, and it was something that would utilize drones that were basically using the Wi-Fi protocol to communicate with their controller by kicking them off of their controller, forcing them to connect to the Raspberry Pi instead, and then allowing you to pilot the drone that you had just hijacked. So basically the Raspberry Pi was acting as an electronic warfare module, and it would detect other drones that were using Wi-Fi and take them over and allow you to basically hijack them and fly them away. So this was a pretty interesting attack. A lot of different drones have moved on to using different communications protocols, so this is not as easy to do as it once was, but it was still a really example of what one can do if you take something like a Raspberry Pi and then weaponize it for use on a drone.
Now they're talking about tethering the Raspberry Pi to various devices. Yeah, we could do an episode on that.
Actually, Alex is already working on an episode we were talking about for using a Raspberry Pi on the go. So basically setting up a Raspberry Pi with a mobile device to be able to quickly access it, use it, and make it something that would be actually nice to use as like a mobile hacking platform. Because there's a lot of different ways of setting this up, but making it run smoothly is not necessarily easy. So if you'd like to see like a setup guide for using a Raspberry Pi with a mobile setup so you can hack on the go, then let us know and we can definitely cover it. All right, let's do another one.
In regards to near-field communication, is it really possible to read cards details at a distance of meters using RF, Proxmark, or modified antennas, etc.?
Yes, it is. But it is not cheap. So if you wanted to pull off this attack, it would cost at least a couple $100s. I've seen the kinds of commercial readers that are designed to read cards that are like inside a vehicle or something like that, like long-range prox readers, and they're big. They're not small, but they do work, and they will work for quite some distance. And if you are looking to do like an RFID attack, then this is definitely the kind of thing you would want to look into. I've seen attacks that also are able to miniaturize this into a suitcase and then use the long-range readers to be able to get people's cards that are just in their pockets. So there's definitely a way of doing this, and while it's not subtle, because the reader itself is quite big, and it's also not cheap because it's rather expensive, it is definitely possible. Could you tether a Raspberry Pi to a computer through Bluetooth? That's an interesting thought. I think that Bluetooth has too low data transfer to be able to do something like...
It has the same speed as Wi-Fi,
well,
I think.
I guess we could see. I mean, I don't know of anything to tether the Raspberry Pi over Bluetooth and then be able to do like VNC, for example.
It'd be really sketchy, yeah. I don't think there's any way to do that.
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't know of any like Bluetooth VNC style thing where you could like see the screen and pass commands. If you mean more of like a terminal style interface, that's a lot more likely to be able to just like send characters and get them back in like a terminal instance. But yeah, we can definitely look at that. Typically, you would tether it through either a second wireless network adapter or something like that.
Serial too.
Or serial. Yeah, either one of those would work. How was it at DEF CON? I don't know because I didn't get to go, but I'll let you know next year.
Yep.
Makes me very sad. All right, next question.
I often see tutorials using Kali on virtual machines. Is it an issue when Kali is installed as the main operating system, privacy, vulnerabilities, etc.?
Ah, that's a great question. So the advantage of having Kali in a virtual machine is that if you mess around, you don't necessarily need to find out completely. You can just delete the virtual machine or start from an earlier image. It's really easy to destroy a virtual image that's become corrupted and go back to a backup. The same cannot be said running bare metal on a hard drive. Now, that being said, also, I think that running at bare metal is much more stable. But if you're looking for the ability to roll back from a problem, and also you're going to be trying out new tools or doing things you wouldn't normally want to do on your actual computer, then a virtual machine is a much safer option, and that's why so many people use them. It's very rare to have a piece of malware or something that like busts out of a virtual machine. So yeah, I would say virtual machines are a great option if you can support them well and if they run well. But for me, the main reason why I don't use a virtual machine is that it just does not run as well, and it runs with more issues compared to just running at bare metal and having everything just physically connected as opposed to virtualized. Virtualization is great, and it means you can do a lot of things that you can't do with the hardware that you have. But it also means that there's such a layer of abstraction that things like wireless network adapters just become really difficult to work with sometimes. And there's just like 3 layers of stuff going on that can be difficult for a beginner to troubleshoot. That would be my only knock on a VM. Zam also says, bare metal is also a lot harder to self-destruct. Well, that's okay, because we got a good guide on that from our Mr. Robot reacting episode. Turns out we just need to drill it with a drill and then throw it in the microwave. All right, and I think that we're coming up on our time. We might have room for like one more question if the disembodied voice of Michael would like to read it.
Can we please review Season 12, Episode 14? It covers car hacking in Mr. Robot.
Oh, we have not touched car hacking at all on this show so far, so that would actually be excellent. So we are planning on doing another Hackers React, and I think Alec is going to help me out with that one.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that we will include that, because I also am going to include a scene from Battle Royale, because I actually forgot that there was hacking in that movie until we recently rewatched it. So definitely going to include the one that you're mentioning if I can find it, because car hacking sounds great, and then the hacking scene from Battle Royale I think that we will include in our reactions as well. Okay, I think that oh wait, we have one more. I've never been on the other side of attack. Where would I look to see evidence of someone Nmap scanning my network? Ah, that's a good question. Where would you go for that?
I'm honestly not sure. I haven't worked with Nmap too much. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, I would say Wireshark. If you want to look
true.
at traffic on Wireshark and you want to see the result of scans going out, you can see the origin of the scan. You can see, what else this device is doing. I would say if you want to look inside of a network, Wireshark is probably the best way to do so, to be able to see everything that's going on and start tracking down unusual traffic, because everything's right there. You can write filters through it for it. You can sift through it and make sure that you're only seeing the data you want. And I find that to be a really useful thing if you've got some unusual behavior on your network, or what's supposed to be on your network and you just want to flip it and just look at things that aren't supposed to be there or aren't recognized. Cool. All right. So I think that's all the episode time we have for today's episode. If you have any suggestions also for our upcoming Hackers React, please drop your suggestions for scenes in the comments today. We would love to hear them because we're going to be doing that pretty soon. And yeah, if you also want to see some other great Varonis content, you can check out the threat update on the Varonis brand channel, where Killian tells you about how real companies are reacting to threats that they are currently experiencing. And yeah, that's all we have. So thank you guys so much for your excellent questions today. It was really fun answering them. I know we didn't get to the cryptozoology ones, but I promise we'll hold them for Michael. And if you have any great questions that didn't get answered today, make sure to drop them on the YouTube channel, because we will go through, gather them up, and make sure to answer them next week. All right, we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.